You. Good afternoon. So I'm Steve Glassman. I'm from the Leatherman Spine Center in Louisville, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to talk a little bit today about SRS Fellowship, about none of the things on my CV. Disclosures. I'd like to first thank Marinus for this incredible opportunity. A lot of these things that come along, these opportunities, you sort of know maybe they're coming. And I'm going to say when Marinus called, I totally didn't see this coming. And it was amazing and still feels amazing 8 months later. So I really thank you for that opportunity. To be able to give a lecture that has been given in the past by a lot of people who I see as friends and mentors feels like a really great honor. And last year, our Harrington Lecturer was Hannibal Bawachi, who, for those of you who know him, is a prince. I mean, he's figuratively a prince, but he's like literally a prince. And, so I heard this talk last year, and then when Marinus called, I thought, well, can I channel that vibe at all? I tried, but it didn't work so well for me. So I figured I'm going to have to do something else. And I thought I'd reflect a bit on sort of what I see as my SRS experience. This is from my meeting in Alaska. It's 10 years ago. It seems like that time went really fast, but it's enough time to have a little bit of perspective. And I'd like to share some of that, and maybe over the 30 some odd years that I've been part of SRS. So one of the things people ask you, sort of what was the best thing about being in SRS leadership and presidential line? And for sure, and not unexpectedly, it's being able to travel around the world and see amazing surgeons, the sort of people you knew, the people you read their work, to see what it was like to see them sort of in real life, where they work, how they teach. And while that was absolutely a great experience, what always struck me as the best thing about all the time traveling through SRS was not the people whose names I knew. It was all the people whose names I didn't know. And, I just, in all my trips, I never went a single place where I felt like I gave more than I got back. I learned everywhere I went. And this is just a couple of pictures from one single trip to India. I could do this for lots and lots of the other trips. But I went to an OR and saw a surgeon who I never knew before the visit, who was doing amazing deformity surgery without any of the resources that I just took for granted and felt like you have to have these things to, take care of these patients. Another example on the right is a surgeon named Shekhar Bojraj. He was actually a fellow with us my very first year in practice. And he went back to Mumbai and he was professor at the university and then in private practice. But when I went back to this trip, he had given all that up to go and buy a little inner city hospital with 2 ORs, one of which he had renovated so that he could take care of patients who were so poor that they couldn't even be taken care of in the public health system in India. And, lots of stories like that are just remarkable. On a personal level, this was an SRS course in India, and I met this young surgeon, and I told him, I really like the vest you're wearing. And he took it off and gave it to me. I mean, literally clothes off your back. I was very embarrassed. I liked Raj's vest too, but he didn't give it to me, But, just the kindness of people, of everyone you met, that was characteristic of what you tend to see in SRS. So this summer, I got to look at this a little bit differently. This is Ron El-Hawari. He's someone who's contributed a lot to the society. He's a lot to do with our initially building our website. And then he built the SRS podcast program. And he ran it for a while. And then when it came around to the 100th podcast, he did that podcast. And so he called me and a number of other past presidents. And he said, I'm going to interview, and I'd like you to reflect on what was most important in your presidency, which is really not something I had thought about that way before. But the answer, as I thought about it, was the importance of SRS fellowship. So this is the Cambridge Dictionary definition of fellowship, a group of people or organization with the same purpose. Now, in all honesty, it gave me a little pause that the example they chose was the National Schizophrenia Fellowship. But I guess if they picked taking care of spinal deformity, there'd be a bunch of psychiatrists sitting around saying, why did they pick that as an example? I think that's really important to our society. This is the first fellowship class. 1966, all of one woman, almost everyone from the United States, a couple of OUS members. And now this is fast forward to 2012. This was Steve Richards' presidency. We had a meeting in Istanbul, and for the board, he made this gift, which was a picture of the mosque with, it's made up of all the pictures of all the people from the SRS, every member of the SRS, a little pointillist picture, and just representative of the growth between those years, both in volume and in diversity. But one of the issues that was a big discussion in particularly the years right before my presidency was that while SRS had a lot of OUS members, it really functioned as a U.S. society. The OUS members weren't integrated in it, not only in terms of leadership, but in terms of the committees and the daily functions. And under a number of presidents, as all of the big decisions are in the SRS, but stamped in Larry Lenke's presidency was a decision that we had to change that. We had to make the SRS functionally OUS, not just in name. And that was the job that was left to the next series of presidents, including me. And so that consumed a lot of what we thought about and talked about. And this is the fellowship committee charges from my year, which essentially said, find a way to programmatically make this happen. And there were plenty of challenges. There were logistic challenges. How do we make meeting attendance requirements? How do we do committee participation? Zoom wasn't a thing then, right? How do we do phone calls and people with different time zones? All these sort of, in a way, mundane things, language barriers, cost, but that yet were important. But that's not what most of the discussion is about. Almost all of the discussion was about the politics of the SRS fellowship requirements. Because historically, young surgeons want to be part of the SRS, and they work hard. We have all of us sitting here work hard to be part of the SRS. We did case lists, and we did, submitting abstracts until you got something in at the meetings and attending the meetings. And now we were talking about adding a group, a lot of whom were mid-level and more senior level surgeons. And how are we going to ask them to do what we had for a long time been able to ask brand new surgeons to do? And was that going to work? Was that going to get rejected? And there was a lot of discussion that really we should just lower the bar. And all of us probably belong to societies where you write a check and you get one letter and now you're part of that society. And that's never been SRS. It's always been skin in the game and real involvement from the members. And the decision was made, no, we can't really lower that bar. That's going to fundamentally change the way the society is. And now with 10 years looking back at it, I feel like we can say that was a really good decision. And it isn't only because a couple years later, Ken Chung was our first OUS president. Sorry, Ken. It's really because this year Marinus is our president, but he's not our OUS president. He's just our president. He just happens to be from Europe. And I think that's a pretty remarkable change. And I think that becoming normal says a lot about the decision that was made that this is how we should continue to approach our society. It's also important that it's now normal, because otherwise he might have made us all wear orange and ride bicycles around Barcelona, which would have been painful for everyone. So that is the first definition of fellowship. It's actually not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the other definition of fellowship, which is fellowship, which is the feeling that people who share something have among one another. And I think that that's something that is different for SRS than certainly any of the other societies that I've been involved with. I know that for many of us, maybe almost all of us, coming to SRS year over year is renewing friendships, and it's different for everybody. For some people, it's you get to be with people that you trained with that you don't get to see otherwise, or people that you were in fellowship with, or people that you're in study groups with. But I think for everyone, that's a big part of coming to SRS and SRS meetings and courses over time. And I think that's so critically important to what holds the society together. When I was a younger surgeon, I also saw that a lot of people, it was their families as well. They would come with their spouses, their significant others. And I always looked at that and said, that's so different than the other societies I'm part of. And that seems really wonderful to me. I mean, I was a young surgeon with kids at home. That wasn't realistic, and it wasn't mostly the younger surgeons, but that's gone on to be something that's been really important, that you have an SRS family. And I think that is also unique to SRS and something that's really wonderful about the society. So all of those things I think are important, but I'd like to, if you'll bear with me, a couple of stories that I think are even more unique to SRS that have impacted me and my life really. The first started 25 years ago. I went to a course in the Philippines, and I met this young surgeon. His name was Rajashekharan. I had no idea who he was. He seemed really smart to me. I didn't know if I'd ever see him again. And I went back to Louisville, and he went back to Coimbatore, India, where he worked in a 17-bed hospital that his parents had started. And as many of you know, he's turned that into what's arguably one of the best subspecialty hospitals in the world. It trains fellows from all over the world. It has SRS courses and SRS visitors, every year. They do the highest end research, that you see anywhere, and take care of the most complex deformity patients. But they also have built a capability to take care of the simplest patients as economically as possible so that they can care for the people that live around them. And for that, Raja won the SRS Humanitarian Award in 2014. That's not the piece that makes it so unique to me personally. It's the fact that he brought us in like family, invited us to family activities and festivals, and both with my wife have gone multiple times, have learned the amazing things not only that he's done, but that his wife has done. And that to me is a really unique kind of SRS story of being able to engage with members in a way that's really impactful. I'd just like to tell you one more of those stories. So this is 2011, my first trip to China. I was asked to go to a COA and SRS course. I get to be there with a pretty remarkable family, faculty. You'll notice Steve Richards is really tall. I think that stands out. But the thing that stood out to me most from that trip was an email that I got when I arrived. It was from a resident at PUMCH. His name was Chen Yu. He told me, call me Max. He probably knew I wasn't going to be able to say anything in Chinese very well. And in this course, I was speaking at the SRS course, which is English. That was fine. My English is passable. But then I was giving a lecture into the general session, and that was in Chinese. This was before the days of simultaneous translation. And he said, I'm going to be your translator, which meant I said a sentence and then he said a sentence. And he wanted to know the talk. So he asked me to give it to him the day before. He practically memorized the talk. I think he knew it better than I did. But it was a remarkable experience and led to him then coming a couple of years later to Louisville. He spent time with us as a fellow in the OR, in the office, dragged to Louisville basketball games with me and my family. He's looking very intently. I don't know that it was that good an experience. And then when I went back to China, not only got to do the course, but got to go to his home and see how someone lived, young surgeon in China. It was an experience I'd never had before. Todd Albert and I went together, and it really made an impact on me. And I then got to see him grow up in the SRS, to become a member who's avidly interested, to be a White Cloud Award winner, to be an SRS traveling fellow, but most important to me personally, to get to be godparent to his child and see his child grow up, to get to give him his English name after my father. And that just is not an experience you see in most societies you belong to. So SRS is wonderful in a lot of ways. I think almost everybody believes it's the best academic spine society in the world, but I think it's really so much more, and I think it's so important that all of us take advantage of that. When I first started, every Thursday afternoon was the SRS tennis tournament and golf tournament, and you were like required to participate in this. And so it was a lot of bad golf and a lot of bad tennis. But it was a camaraderie, and we've moved on past that. People want to use that time for education, but the spirit of that is still important to us. And we provide the opportunity in a lot of ways, fellowships where you can, travel and go visit different surgeons, things from the awards committee and scholarships committee. But I would encourage everyone to recognize that all of the people in this society are doing amazing things and are interested in having people learn what they're doing, come spend time with them. There's almost no one you would ask, could I come see what you do in your OR, who wouldn't say, yes, I'd love to have that. And that's today the way that we can continue the camaraderie that this society has always had over time, that's been such an important part of what's different with SRS than other things that you belong to, and to me is the essence of SRS fellowship. So I thank you all for listening.